Welcome to the explainer. We're going to start with a question that's, well, it's so uncomfortable that a lot of people have probably never even thought to ask it. And it's this: what's the price for changing your religion? I mean, really think about that. For some people, the answer is everything. So, to mark the International Day for Victims of Religious Violence, a group of interviewers actually went out onto the streets and they started asking people about this thing called apostasy, which is basically just the act of leaving your faith. And let me tell you, the reactions they got were really, really revealing. So, yeah, that was the big question they were asking people. Can you be punished for changing what you believe? And what's wild is that for so many people, the very idea, the concept that you could get in trouble for changing your mind about religion, it was just completely foreign to them, something they'd never even considered. And you can see it in this first reaction. The most common thing they heard at first wasn't people getting angry or wanting to debate. It was just plain confusion. Like, for a lot of people, the whole concept of being punished for leaving a religion just didn't compute. But it went beyond just being confused. There was this real sense of hesitation. One of the interviewers even said that a lot of people were visibly reluctant, almost scared to even talk about it.
And you see the sentiment here, right? It all points back to the same thing, a real lack of awareness. For so many, the idea that just changing your faith could be something you're punished for, that was completely new territory.
Okay, so this initial confusion that people on the street were feeling, well, it pretty quickly turned into something else: shock. To really get why, we need to break down what's actually at stake here. The key word here, the one we need to understand, is apostasy. It's the formal act of renouncing your religion. And what the source material points out is that under some interpretations of Islamic law or Sharia, this isn't just something that's looked down on. No, it's actually considered a crime. And this is where it gets genuinely chilling. 7. That's the number of countries in the world right now where the punishment for apostasy is death. And listen, this isn't some abstract theoretical debate. We're talking about real places. In countries like Saudi Arabia, Iran, Afghanistan, and Iraq, deciding to leave Islam can be a capital offense. It can get you the death penalty. So you can imagine, when the people on the street heard this, their reaction just flipped. It went from confusion to total disbelief. As this person said, the idea of a death sentence just for quitting your religion, well, they found it exaggerated. And that's putting it mildly, right? So the obvious next question is, where does a law this extreme even come from? How is that possible? Well, according to the sources in our explainer, the answer is found in the religious texts themselves. The interviewers actually pointed to specific sources, like this one, a hadith, which is a saying attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. And it's pretty direct, isn't it? It's a command like this that forms the basis, the textual justification for these laws. And this is where the interviewers made a really important distinction. They were careful to argue that, look, any individual believer can absolutely be tolerant. The issue, they say, comes from a literal interpretation of certain texts, which they present as not being tolerant at all. But let's be clear, this isn't just some abstract debate about law or theology. For some people, the consequences of all this are terrifyingly real and incredibly personal. Take Adela, for example. She was actually one of the people conducting these interviews. She's an ex-Muslim from Algeria, and for her, none of this is theoretical. Just by speaking out, by publicly talking about her former religion, she faces a prison sentence back in Algeria. The specific law she's talking about is Algeria's Article 144 bis. Now, it doesn't actually use the word apostasy, but what it does is criminalize blasphemy and any kind of speech that's considered an offense to Islam. So it effectively silences people like her, ex-Muslims. And the penalty? It's serious. For the crime of just speaking her mind, Adela is facing a minimum of 5 years in prison if she ever goes back to Algeria. Just think about that. So when you're faced with these really stark realities, the conversations on the street eventually turned to a more hopeful question, which is, okay, so what can we do about this? And from those conversations, it seems like 3 main ideas for change came up. First, from the top down, you need political will. You need leaders who are brave enough to just get rid of these laws. Then on the ground, you need public awareness, which is exactly what these interviews were trying to do. And finally, looking to the future, it's all about education, cultivating critical thinking to arm young people against fundamentalism. Despite how grim all this sounds, there was a real sense of hope. especially coming from the younger people they talk to. A feeling that, hey, the world is going to change. A belief that their generation with more awareness just won't be the same. They're going to forge a different path and refuse to accept these old rules. So, in the end, this whole discussion really boils down to a fundamental conflict, doesn't it? In a world that's so often filled with dogma, a world that demands we all conform, what is the real value? And maybe, what is the real cost of having a critical mind?